Kris was the introduction to one of the most controversial mechanics in Fire Emblem, and themselves are a widely disliked character for ruining the story of Fire Emblem 3. I mean, seriously, if you look up Kris Fire Emblem on YouTube, Gas' most hated Fire Emblem characters video is the third result. However, I feel as though these issues are overblown, and I'll delve into them now. Note that I'll be referencing the dialogue of the female version, as that's the one I play as. First off, let's get the misconception out of the way that Kris steals Jagen's thunder, mostly being noted in the Chapter 3 end cutscene. However, this one confuses me as it's literally not the case. I mean, the footage on screen is showing the line, as it was, in Fire Emblem 3. I really don't understand what people mean when they cite this instance, and it honestly feels like I'm taking crazy pills when they do. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, let's analyze how Kris ruins Mystery of the Emblem's story and its remake. To analyze this, I'll first have to share my thoughts on Fire Emblem 3's original story, and to be honest, I don't see what the big deal is. When people say Kris ruined FE3's story, they talk about it as if it's some sacred example of literary divinity, when if you think about it, it's just Shadow Dragon's story again. I mean, really think about this here. Garnef kidnaps your sister and steals the falchion. Marth's kingdom gets taken over. Marth has to find some sacred orbs to stop this from happening. You kill Garnef to get the falchion and take down Medius soon after. The only thing I'd say is truly new to the story is a lonely man with PP insecurities, and when you do find out some new information, it's told to you in the most boring way possible. For example, in Anri's Way, Zane just text dumps you about something that happened 100 years ago in scenes that you can't skip. Phew, we finally hear Prince Marth. Prince Marth, did you know that this game has lore that you should care about? Did you know this game has lore that you should care about, you fucking idiot? Did you know that Anri, 10 million years ago, crossed a bridge, and across that bridge was his wife, and he fucked his wife, and that was your descendant, that was your ancestor mod. Anri fucked your mother, and that was your fucking ancestor mod. And that's not even the best part. Medius jumped into a giant ball pit at a Chuck E. Cheese, but then Chuck E. Cheese said, Medius, no, this is for kids only, and then Chuck E. Cheese with all fucking 5 Nights at Freddy's on his ass, Marth. Don't you care about the deep lore of this game? Okay. And Jagen needs to tell Marth the story of Naga, which he should probably already know since he's the wielder of the falchion. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a fine story, it's just that...
It's been done.
So, if you do think Kris ruined the story of New Mystery, what if I told you there was a DS remake where Marth got his kingdom stolen, he got some help from a friendly wizard to get some magic balls, then saved his cleric sister and killed a dragon? So now let's see how I think Kris improves the story and the characters of Arcanea. As an avatar, I'd say Kris is pretty bad, since unlike Byleth, they actually have a personality, so you can't really project onto them all that well. However, the character that is there, I think, provides some good material. To see what I mean, let's look at how FE3 Book 2 starts. The only information you're given on these new characters is that they're new recruits. But who's Luke? Who's Roderick? Why is there a mini Gordon now? In comparison, Fire Emblem 12 adds a prologue where Kris joins the Knights and goes through their training program, meeting these characters and getting to know them along the way. Kris is also needed as a new character for this section, as it'd be weird to take a pre-existing character like Luke and make him the main character of the prologue, only for him to then be de-emphasized in the main story. Kris themselves are the serious and loyal type, but they can be pushed to joke if the situation calls for it, and since they grew up in an obscure village, they aren't very aware of a lot of social norms. Kris's serious nature mixes well with some of the more zany and out-there characters of Arcanea and leads to some very funny interactions that were absent in the original. Kris also provides a pair of fresh eyes, as since previously mentioned, they were raised in a backwater village, so in some instances, they take Marth's place, like in the Jagen explaining cutscene. It makes sense here since Kris obviously wouldn't know this royal history. This also applies to the rest of the cast of Arcanea, since Kris supports with everyone, even characters that don't have supports with others, and since Kris wouldn't know any of them before this, it gives them the perfect chance to open up about their personalities. While some might hate the fact that a character they have a chance of not liking takes up most of the supports, we need to think about the context of this decision. This is a game with nearly 80 playable characters, of which only about 5 outside of the main cast actually had a personality before New Mystery. Now, to write multiple supports and flesh out the personalities of 80 characters for a series that wasn't doing too well financially at the time, simply it would have taken too much time, and I personally don't think a discussion between Dolphin and Aslan would have been all that riveting given the personality they had in Shadow Dragon. And while you could say that a lot of the supports are bad, this is the case with every single Fire Emblem game with supports. I'd say there are about as many bad supports in this game as there are in any other Fire Emblem game.
Wait, what are you? No, not again!
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
It's just that most of the supports in this game involve Kris, so that could skewer one's perception. But honestly, there are a lot of great ones in here, like how Kris's intense training regimen clashes with Mathis' lax lifestyle, Fina teasing Kris and this leading to Kris bringing out her inner jokester, and how Samto's attempts to hit on her lead her to violence. If you want a more in-depth analysis on some of her supports, there's a link to a good thread on it in the description. Honestly, you could compare Kris to Ike, who in comparison to Kris, everybody likes. Ike comes from a non-noble background as a simple fighter, but early on befriends royalty and through this quickly rises through the ranks. Ike also knows very little about the world, which allows us to be put into his shoes when we're learning about Gallia, the Laguz, and other Tullius lore. Does that sound familiar to you at all? While I don't think Kris is as well executed as Ike, as I can see how Kris's personality and other traits can be a drag for some people, I honestly think it's interesting how many people like Ike compared to the amount of people that hate Kris considering their vast similarities. Also, they're potentially both homosexual. However, there is one part that annoys me about Kris and all other avatars in Fire Emblem: the worship. Kris is quickly praised as being the best thing since sliced bread after a little bit of training, quickly becomes BFFs with the main character, and even steals the glory from him in the finale, only for her to give it back, saying Marth needs to be the hero. Kris is definitely more extreme in this department compared to the other avatars, and I think the game would have been better off for it if this aspect was toned down. The tension can also be interrupted in some scenes, like how when you're about to enter Medius' tower there's silly dialogue where Kris is offered a wolf hat, but this only happens a few times throughout the game. As for gameplay, it's widely agreed that she's a great unit, however some people think she's too good and it just feels like more avatar worship. For people who feel this way, let me show you a simple trick to solve this problem. In conclusion, I think I like Kris quite a bit. She provides fresh eyes to see the Arcanian world with that it desperately needed, is used as a tool to help flesh out other characters, and in many ways is similar to many people's favorite Fire Emblem Lord Ike. Sure, she does steal some of the spotlight from Marth, but in the end, every character in Fire Emblem has issues, and if this was toned down a bit, I think people would have been more accepting of, in my opinion, one of the best additions to New Mystery of the Emblem. Is she my favorite character? No, incredibly far from it, but I think she's vastly overhated, and hopefully after this video you appreciate what she brought to the table in New Mystery a bit more.